everybody. Sick of the same old podcast? How about come and join Pete and Greg for some live fishing that's not really live, but during this podcast it's live.
Yeah, I mean, we're alive right now. We're doing this podcast. Where are we actually?
We're on the St. Croix River near Bayport and Minnesota in Hudson, Wisconsin. And we're sitting on the ice and we're going to do a podcast.
This isn't another fishing podcast. This is another fishing podcast.
All right, Pete. Well, I got to tell you, I really never wanted to do a podcast without you. So it is fantastic that we're here together and really kind of on one of our favorite places on the planet, sort of. It's one of our favorite places, I'd say.
We have a lot of places.
Indeed. Yes, we're on the St. Croix River. It's a frozen St. Croix River. I just hit my mic there. I apologize. It's not very professional of me.
Yeah, you have to forgive us if there's an occasional audio glitch because, I mean, we're literally sitting on a foot and a half of ice on a river, you know, which seems like a crazy concept. And then actually doing a podcast while you sit and fish, it's kind of great, right?
It is.
We did this one time on the Mississippi. Remember that?
We did.
Near Wabasha or something?
Yeah, it was
hard.
It was hard.
It's easier now, I will say. If this works, when you get it and there's audio, then...
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, we are recording audio. There's no real way to test it.
If chaos breaks out, just so everybody understands, so we're sturgeon fishing. We have 3 sturgeon rods in. We're allowed 4, but 3 is all we can manage right now. You might hear me wheezing also. If we get a fish, we have to clear 2 lines, because there's total chaos if we don't. We do have a 4th line right here, and I have a bunch of smaller fish sort of chasing my jig and my minnow around, and I'm just desperate to figure out what they were. And we were seeing these the last 2 weeks. This is our 3rd Wednesday in a row out here. So I'm determined to catch something that's not a sturgeon just to see what's down there. But so far, over the 3 weeks, this being number 3, first night, 2 sturgeon, nothing over 30, I would say, right?
Right, yeah.
And then this second night, nothing, nary a bite. We actually had Darren Troseth in the house, who is a guide out here, and he brought his live scope in and let us see the sturgeon that weren't biting anything, which was entertaining and frustrating at the same time. And now we're back to just the good old fish finder sitting here and watching our bobbers and hoping for the best.
Yeah, there are a lot of sturgeon on the St. Croix River. It's a very healthy fishery, I'd say. So I think there's just a number of fish below us. I think anywhere you go, there's a number of fish below you. And it's hard to I don't think they're relating to any kind of contour lines or anything like that. Do you think that that's going on? Have you heard that? It just sounds like you can catch them everywhere.
They graze. Like Darren mentioned this last week. You know, he showed us a map of a tag sturgeon over the course of a year, and it basically covered every square inch of the entire lake basin, which this is the St. Croix River, but it opens up into a wide area that they call the lake basin. It feels more like a lake through here. And yeah, they covered everything. And I've seen other maps of people just marking where they've caught fish over the years, and it basically covers every part of the lake. So we're trying to avoid the coal plant, which is on the far north end,
which is over here, isn't it?
36 Bridge. I don't even know which way we're looking right now.
I think it's over there.
But that has been kicking out warm water randomly, and people have been driving, like, it's open water when it's kicking out warm water. And when that warm water shuts off, it freezes with a thin layer of ice, which makes it super dangerous because it looks like the rest of the ice, and then people just come cruising in that have never been out here before. And we've lost 2 vehicles in the last 3 weeks, and I want nothing to do with that. So we came south, and we're kind of on the big open part of the lake. There's probably, I'd say, 20 houses within a couple hundred yards of us, but nobody really close to us. We just kind of parked in a big fat open area. I think a couple of people parked next to us since we've been here, but not real close. It's just kind of a big flat 30 to 35 basin. So These sturgeon are just like cows grazing, and you just sit and wait, and they bite light, so you have to constantly be paying attention. But that's part of the fun here. These sturgeon started making a big comeback in like the 90s. They started stocking them, but the weird part about sturgeon is the females take 30 years just to become sexually mature. So if you dropped a sturgeon in here in the mid-90s, she's just about ready to spawn right now, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, they're amazing fish, especially when you consider, I think it's a pretty unique thing that we have available to us to be able to catch these very large fish through the ice, and they're just an odd fish. They're not a typical ice fishing species,
Right.
So it's just, and we're not far from here. I'm like an hour and 7 minutes away. You're roughly, maybe
hour and a half. I'm in Rochester, but we're, probably 20 minutes from downtown St. Paul. So it's super unique. I'm not a huge fan of pan fishing through the ice. I guess it starts to wear me a little thin.
Yeah. Ooh, right there. You just had a bite right there. Yeah. So this is good. Pete is. We're also recording for an edited show as well. So I got a wide camera here. Got a POV camera, a chesty, if you will, on my chest. And then we got this camera here right between us. That is going to be like our handheld camera. What
did that bobber do? Did he ding sideways?
It just kind of, how would you say it? It kind of tilted, kind of just a little bit of a shimmy.
Just a wobble?
A wobble, yes. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I can't remember what I was saying before that bite, but it's just, it's a unique fishery, and it's one of those things where this year there was no ice fishing season last year, so for us to have really good ice here, and for it to be relatively close to us, it's just a hell of an opportunity.
And the other thing is, without good ice, you can't drive to your spots, and the amount of gear that you have to bring out here, especially if you're filming, is impossible to drag. I mean, it's not impossible, but it is a brutal way to fish, to haul everything in the sled. I don't think we could do it on a single trip with 2 sleds. This house alone is ridiculous. So being able to park right by the tent, we got a mark right on the bottom there.
Nice.
Being able to park right by the tent, unload, set up camp, bring the big tank of propane, bring a bunch of extra lights, and then basically set up a radio studio, I guess is what we've done.
Yeah.
Hosting a radio show.
Yeah, so I'm using my iPhone to record this, but Pete's got a mic on him, a Rode wireless mic. What are they called? Rode Go 2 wireless mics that we're using, plugged into the phone. But yeah, we got a light there, and then Pete's got these awesome kind of kicker lights, I like to call them. He's got one over here that's illuminating the bobber.
Amazon work lights of some sort.
And they're perfect.
It's the first time we've ever had them out here. We're giving them a shot.
Yeah, so this is basically like little studio on the ice here, which is perfect. It's really nice, like these hub style shelters. This is a clam hub style shelter.
A thermal version. Yeah, I'm sitting here in a hoodie, and I'm mighty comfortable.
The heater's right behind Pete.
That's helping.
And I don't even know if I need this beanie on right now, but so like you go through the setup as far as like how many holes, how many rods are we allowed out here?
Yeah, this is border water, so we got Wisconsin one side, Minnesota on the other. So you 2 per person, which is really nice. It's kind of like the Mississippi River for us. Mississippi is actually 3 per person on the Wisconsin side, which I believe is the same case here. But the St. Croix is a unique waterway in the sense that it comes out of northern Minnesota, and it's a protected federal waterway that used to drain into Lake Superior, but lava and volcanoes put up a dam, and then it forced everything to come down here. So it's like this really narrow channeled, high banked, high bluffed federal protected waterway that is really clear, has a diverse amount of species. And like we said, this is a slow area, so we can come up here and we can set up on thick ice. Otherwise, I'm terrified by ice, especially on rivers, but this feels really good here. But yeah, we get out here early as possible after a couple of drinks, and then we need to burn. We have 8-inch augers, so you need to burn 3 of them. You can't see them in the video image, but basically it looks like a Mickey Mouse ears with a third one below it, because those things have pectoral fins that do not budge. They're built out of cartilage. They don't bend very well. And the dorsal needs a place to come out too. So if you get a really big one on, you need 3 holes. 2 holes would manage most of them. But so we got out here and burned 3 holes, which is a ton of work, even with our battery 2 augers. 1.5 foot of ice. I mean, it is a sweat breaker. You get out here and it's amazing how hard it is to like line 3 holes up and cut them clean, because you're usually trying and trying again. And then we cut a couple extra holes for our transducers. I'm fishing with this little rod out of my transducer hole. And per normal St. Croix, there's a steady amount of marks. And that's why I have this little rod tonight, because I'm like, I think I've done this before and I don't remember what I pulled up through the ice. But mud puppies, which are salamanders, are a common thing to catch here because we're just using crawlers and minnows on treble hooks. But we haven't seen them in the last 3 trips. Usually the success rate is every other trip feels about right, but it's probably less than that. It's probably more like 30%. As far as big fish go, I mean, I wouldn't even know how to rate that for us. I don't even remember the last year I caught a big sturgeon. I'm talking in the 50 range. I mean, that was probably because we didn't do it the last year. So for sure 2 years, but I'm saying probably 4 years since I've caught a big sturgeon.
Yeah, your biggest is 60 out here. We actually made a video of it.
Yeah.
That's a great big fish.
But that was probably
super awesome.
7-8 years ago, right?
Jeez,
I mean,
man, I don't know where time's going. That's bonkers.
I know.
It's bonkers. Time is just slipping.
But the big point there is that you need a ton of patience. You have to just enjoy being out here. It's not like you're pan fishing and dinging a bunch of little fish and trying to catch some keepers. You're patiently waiting, and you do not want to miss a bobber to go under. You got to just pick it up and set those hooks if there's any action on those rods. But it's a unique type of fishing, but in an odd way, it's kind of like fishing as a kid, because you're just sitting still and staring at your bobber.
Really good mark right there.
It is. I'm going to go up to him.
Pretty strong signal right there.
Yeah, he's leaving.
Are you zoomed in at all?
No.
Yeah, that's a good. It's a strong signal on Pete's. He's got a great little Garmin unit. It's not live sonar, but it's a really nice. The Garmin is putting out such great stuff. I've had there's someone who commented on a recent video about what was it? It was someone was commenting about how I thought the new Humminbird Mega Live 2. That's their updated.
That's their updated live scope?
Yeah, updated. Yeah, their updated. People like to say forward-facing sonar. I think we need to get away from that. That's just too much.
Right.
So live sonar. It's their updated version, which I think is very good. It's very much improved. But I titled it, and this is the thing that's so tricky about like YouTube and just titling in general, whether you're whatever platform you're putting a video on. The reality is there needs to be some level of clickbaiting going on, because there's a lot of videos, you got to grab people's attention. So anyway, I put on this video. It was about Brett McComas Target Walleye. He did I saw this. I get glean a lot of information from their newsletter, right? So they were talking about.
They still got that going on, huh?
Yeah, it's great.
Great.
Yeah. So there was a lake trout guy, named Doug Wagner, and he was using the new Mega Live 2 for ice fishing for lake trout. And so it was a video of him, with this new Mega Live, 2, and seeing this like bait ball. And I mean, this bait ball, dude, it is so pronounced. And seeing, just moving, and there's a lake trout to the left.
A bait ball meaning like a school of...
It's a school. It's, it
like
happens in salt water.
Yeah.
It happens in fresh water. It's really pronounced in salt water. It's crazy, but, it's a ball of bait, and this lake trout's just marauding, underneath,
right. Slashing him when he's ready.
And it comes in, it scares the bait ball away. The bait ball leaves that thin, cone or whatever. And then, so you just see, and you see the lure, he's just jigging,
He's all that's left.
Yeah, and he's all that's left, and that lake trout just cones right in on it.
Right.
And he sets the hook, and it looks fantastic, And so I titled the video, Hummingbird's Mega Live 2, or Hummingbird's Back, Mega Live 2 is incredible. Incredible in caps,
And you upset some people?
Someone was like, it's not incredible, okay? Is it improved? Yes. And so, sorry, but because the reason I started this is that Garmin is probably still superior
as far as like the live.
It's really good, so, but what I said when I commented back to that guy is that Garmin is so, compared to like Lowrance or Humminbird, Garmin is super diversified. They're in, like, my wife uses their watches for running. They do their electronics. I mean, they do a lot of consumer electronics, not just for fishing,
Right.
So they're a lot more diversified than Humminbird,
which sounds
is.
Like a bad thing, but I think it works in your advantage in the fishing industry because the fishing products always seem to be behind technology-wise. The cameras are in the same boat. You always look at the cameras, you're like, okay, I mean, these seem fine, but they all seem overpriced and don't seem to be doing what cameras do above the water. Why can't we just do this below the water,
Right.
Or why don't you have, better camera controls above the water where it just sends whatever it needs to through that. You got to have a cable locked into it. So I had to mark them, and it's completely screwed from the inside. Like, it just got condensation inside the camera. It's like a $350 camera. It's so frustrating.
Oof.
So what? I have to send it in. It cost me $70 to send it in, and they're gonna tell me what to do next after I paid $70 to send it in.
Oof.
And cameras don't give you that much joy. It's kind of like it's a hit or miss.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of fun with them ice fishing for panfish, especially with kids. Then they can have something to watch, and there's always 10 fish in view, and you just, this is a little different here. I think it gets dark quickly, and you don't get a lot of field of view from any cameras, but fishing technology seems to be always behind the rest of the world by like 10 years. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and I think, with Garmin, they're just, they're a global company, electronics company, and they've got just a ton of, products, so they're super diversified, and I think they just have a bigger pool of people, talent, and then also just money.
Right.
So I suspect that's why they're just so they're making such great products now. I obviously I could be wrong, but that's just kind of what my gut.
Do you know where they're based out
of? Kansas City.
It's an American company?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought this little unit. I had a Lowrance that I took off my boat, and I hated it for ice fishing, and I hated it on my boat. But that thing was 20 years old, but whatever.
It's either Kansas City, it's either Kansas City or St. Louis. I get them. I'm pretty sure it's Kansas City.
But even so, it's American,
it's Missouri.
Which is nice.
Yeah, they're based out of Missouri.
And then I had
that win again.
And then I had a Humminbird.
Ooh, yeah, so we got something going here, guys. Just that bobber's just going. He's got a little ice fishing float, like the typical float, yellow float you use for ice fishing. And it's just... These sturgeon, as big as they can get, they don't bite. It's a very subtle bite.
And they can just knock things around because our holes are about 6 feet apart. So if you have a big fish swim in, they can just knock your lines around even if they're not picking up your baits. So all of a sudden all your bobbers start going wonky. I think this is the bead and the treble hook. The rig we have on has got like 7 or 8 glow beads up to a treble hook. And beyond that, there is a swivel and like a 1-ounce sinker. And then we're lighting up those beads with our UV lamps. 2 times ago when we got a couple of sturgeon, we caught both of those on a spoon, which is my other rod here. I can't tell what's going on there though. That thing definitely was moving.
Yeah, like obviously these sturgeon can get very big, 7 feet, like, I mean, it's possible that you could get a fish that big. I mean, I don't know if St. Croix could produce that necessarily. Maybe one day it could, but they can get big is my point.
76 is the mark, so...
But they're big, and so they're, and there's a good, this has a heck of a population, this system's got a heck of a population in here. And so, yeah, like Pete was saying, they can just hit your line. You got this vertical line coming down, and they can, the caudal fin could swipe your line, or their pectorals, any part of their body. And you might think that you're getting a bite when all it's doing is just a sturgeon swim by and smacking your line. So,
and these little aforementioned mud puppies are little salamanders, and they're little light biters too. They're salamanders that don't lose their gills, which is only 2 types of salamanders in Minnesota. Mud puppy's one of them. They're pretty awesome little critters, but I've had nights where they drive you bonkers because they're just nibbling on your worms all night, and then you bring it up and there's nothing left on there, and you're like, what is going on? And you detect these really light bites, which aren't that different than a sturgeon bite, but it's 5:56 right now. The sun set 20 minutes ago. It is dark out there, isn't it?
yeah.
Might as well close up these
Yeah, I
windows.
guess we can all close them up.
Save a little heat. But it is the witching hour right now. Like with most fishing, it is sunset and sunrise. Not that you can't catch them any other time, because you can. But that seems to be the consensus on the best time to be out and about. And they do seem to happen in bunches, but man.
Yeah, so it's like, you come out here, it's very relaxing until you hook up with a big, the biggest fish that's in this system. That's what's great about it.
The biggest fish you'll probably ever catch in your life is always potentially sniffing around your lure, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say lure, but presentation rather.
And there's just constant stuff on the graph. There's constant critters beneath you. So it keeps you pretty engaged, because a number of them aren't sturgeon, but there's a significant number that are.
Yeah. I mean, we've got sauger, we got walleye, we have crappie, we have sunnies, stripers, channel cats. I've never caught a channel. It feels like you would catch a channel fishing like this. I don't get why we never do.
It is interesting because, channels bite pretty, in the winter.
I saw a guy pulled a huge flathead out of here just like last week.
Really?
Yeah.
That's very strange.
Like a 30-pounder.
Weird. Yeah, because flatheads get real.
Like, what do they do?
They get real inactive. They really shut down in the winter. So I don't know what that one was doing.
That must have been like a coal plant hibernation.
Yeah, maybe.
Wake up.
Yeah, so what we were talking about live sonar. Yeah, so
live sonar still cost prohibitive. Like, I can't. Like, that setup Darren had in here was probably $3 or $4 grand by the time the battery and the setup, right? Wasn't that where he was?
Yeah, I don't know what the number, like, yeah,
a lot of that was,
that's at
it was
right
aftermarket stuff mixed with, he had a huge
yeah.
lithium battery, which those things aren't cheap, So I'm guessing you're $3.5 to $4 grand in, and then it's like, well, am I getting that out of this? He's a guide, makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
Or if you're just out here every night, but for me, it doesn't change your ability to detect a bite, but it does put you on red alert when fish move in. You can see the fish and you can see how long they are, like down to the inch, which is pretty awesome, but in the end it doesn't make them bite any better. You're still at the mercy of your worm sitting down there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's Wednesday, and we'll put this up on Monday, this coming Monday. But yeah, this past weekend I was filming the first stage of the Bass Pro Tour on Lake Conroe in Texas. So talking about live sonar. Now for the Bass Pro Tour, this is just how much it's changing fishing. It's really, really, really interesting because it's so darn powerful. But for the Bass Pro Tour now, you're allowed only one period. So they have 3 periods of competition a day. You're only allowed 1 period to use live sonar. And
is that right?
Yeah.
Is that standard?
I think it's now standard for the Bass Pro Tour. And the good thing about the Bass Pro Tour is that they do break up the day in periods, and there's a boat official in every boat to enforce it, you know. The other organizations, that's not really a possibility. So
what's the productivity of the day that allows live sonar versus the days that aren't? Is there a noticeable jump in the amount of fish they're bringing in?
That's a good question. So I came in on the last day for this event. So I didn't really, they're 4-day events.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure. I didn't really get a full appreciation for how it's kind of, and this is the first event with this new format, or with this new, these new restrictions. So I'm not quite sure. I can't really fully form an opinion yet, like how it, but I think it's good. Like I've harped on this a lot, but I do believe that at least in competition, it needs to be regulated because it's so dominant.
Yeah, and if you're watching it, like, you want people to be engaged with their fishing.
Yes. And I think the problem that I see, and I know I'm going to sound like an old fuddy-duddy to the young guys that love it, and the young guys are really, there's guys that, they're really good at it, but what I may be seeing, I kind of got the sense. I filmed with Drew Gill, and Drew Gill is he's 22 years old, great kid, really a big fan of him. Like, he's got a good career ahead of him. He's very mature for 22, and he's very good at forward-facing sonar. But what's interesting is that I wonder if, these young guys that have just become so good at it, if it's a muscle, if their other muscles, so to speak, are becoming weakened,
atrophied.
When you then have that turned off, it's gonna be interesting to see as the season progresses. Are they
less effective?
Because it's like having the lights turned off, and now I don't know that there's fish in this section.
Right.
So what am I supposed to do?
Because the Van Dam method was like, I would cast 7,000 times in a day. Those guys are not used to that.
They're not.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if the old school guys are going to excel because that definitely could be an issue. Whereas these younger anglers are they become so reliant upon it.
Just their confidence level is going to get hurt a bit.
You've got it's sight. It's sight. You have sight through the water column, and all of a sudden that's taken away, and now you've got to go back to how the old guys did it, where it's Van Dam. It's covering water. It's using your whole every cast. You're doing everything to potentially trigger a fish, while you're making, as many casts as possible. You're just trying to up your odds, and
They still allowed side scan, but they won't allow live scope.
Right. And the issue is that it's so dominant. It's because you got eyes throughout the whole water column, right? So it's so dominant, and you don't.
Well, you can see a real time reaction is a huge part of it too.
It's wild. So you're seeing if a fish, how they're behaving to your presentation, whether you need to change up too,
And on here you can see if something's following it, if you lift it, but you're not seeing if he's turning around or reacting to something that you're doing that makes sense for him.
You can do it. You can do it with if you're going full on vertical fishing with 2D sonar. You can determine whether a fish is reacting to how they're reacting to it. If they're going away, you can see that. At the very far right, side of the screen. You'll see
Right.
them going up and down, and if they're interested,
That's your flasher.
But yeah, but you're not. It's only, you're only seeing that if you're going completely down. Whereas, live sonar, you can be out and making a cast, 40 yards away.
Yeah.
Or, 40 feet or whatever.
That's the amazing part about it.
And then, but the thing that I don't know, maybe last year, towards the end of last year, there were some anglers that are like, yeah, the hard bait sales are not doing well because so many people are using, they call it like a jig head minnow, because they see them on the ground, they're scanning, right? They're
It's good for targeting.
And they're just going, they're going like out in no man's land.
Are they doing this? Like moving that with their hand?
They're doing it, so basically
it's on their motor?
It's on their motor, on the shaft, and they're just scanning with the trolling motor, and then they're like, oh, there's one there. And then they're picking them up. A lot of times, and this is probably going to change as it gets more, the prices get down and people can afford them more, the live sonar. Those fish typically haven't been, targeted before. But now, so they're arguably easier to catch out there. But so, what's going to happen as this becomes more popular? Are those fish going to be harder to catch? But we'll see. But the problem is that it's one specific technique with one specific lure for the most part, a jig head minnow. And so, to me, the beauty of fishing just in general, but especially bass fishing and competitive bass fishing, is that it had all of these different techniques and lures. As a fisherman, you love lures. In bass fishing, there's all kinds of lures, And it's like, oh, what are we going to do now? Are we just going to
styles,
exactly.
Yeah.
To me, that's what makes a sport, rich. You have all these different ways to, you can look at golf. There's different. If everybody's using a jig head minnow and looking down at the screen. And so is the spectators, the people watching, all they're seeing is a guy looking down at their screen, their back. I don't think it's good for the sport. So I do think, and I'm not poo-pooing live sonar, I think it's great, but I do think it needs, especially in competition, it does need to be restricted.
Are you seeing guys live scope around docks? Or do they don't even need to?
Yes, I have. And it's amazing.
Big old mark.
Yeah, like they can go to a dock and scan it, and go, oh, they're right there. And a lot of times, if you get that beam right, I mean, you can get a picture of that fish. It's really remarkable.
You can just get it dialed in.
When people first started just using it, and really getting good at it, I filmed some screens where I'm like, what? It's like, this is a massive sea change, in fishing. And, I do think that, I think I'm glad to see that, Major League Fishing is doing that, because I think it's probably the best course of action as far as...
Is it Major League Fishing and BASS?
So BASS is doing a different kind of, they're competing organizations. I can't remember exactly how they're addressing it. I don't know that it's limited at all. I think how they're doing it is they're only allowing, God, I'm talking up my butt right now. They're restricting it in a different way. I don't think they're saying, oh, you can't, there's no way for them to police it like Major League Fishing can.
Yeah.
So I think the way they're doing it is that they're only allowed, they're saying that you can only have, they're doing something with like the size of the screen, or you can only have so many fish finders or something like along those lines. But
so many fish finders.
Dude, it's getting stupid. It's getting, I think that's the other thing about the sport too, is like, I don't think it's a good thing to allow three big graphs. Like, a lot of guys have 3 graphs.
Is it 3 separate live scopes? Or is there usually just one live in the boat?
So what's happening, a lot of these guys are now using what's known as perspective mode paired up with their forward mode. So it's still live sonar, forward-facing sonar. The perspective mode they're trained. What it is it's like turning the transducer so it gives you a bird's eye view, right, of the bottom.
Just cut straight across.
It's like that perspective mode is typically like for shallower water, you know.
Yeah.
But imagine wherever you point that thing, it's giving you the bird's eye view down in front of you, the bottom, and then you can see fish.
You can see you're looking at the back of the fish as it's moving around on the screen.
Imagine that's the bottom right there of a lake. You're flying over it. The boat's right here, right? You see this right? So imagine that's the beam, and it's showing you all of that. It's like you're looking down. So it's like you're seeing the bottom. So you could see a tree laying down.
Yeah.
Like it would be if it was clear and the bird's looking down.
Or a hump. Or
right. And then a fish swimming by it, right? It's like God mode. I say it's God mode.
Hey, right.
And then you have your regular forward mode. So you have that. You got one screen that's got that. And then you got your forward mode that is cutting through. It's then that cross section of the water column.
Right.
That's cutting through that, and you're just getting really pinpoint. So you're seeing there isn't a part of the water column that isn't, that you're, and it's a massive shift in competitive fishing and walleye fishing. It's happening, and I just think there needs to be a governor put on it, or it's just.
I guess, yeah. It's hard because everyone that has it loves it, I'm sure. And they're like, well, why won't you use it, I guess. But
and I think it shouldn't be banned, but because it does give you some really cool insights,
Yeah.
Because a lot of these guys have learned that the textbook is complete BS. The bass fishing textbook. Oh, well, the fish are, this time of year, the fish are migrating off into the pockets and and what they're finding is there are all kinds of fish that are relating to nothing. They're probably like more bait fish oriented, but there are fish where fish are not supposed to be, and those guys are targeting them with that live sonar.
Right. Now they have no place to hide.
Right. Right.
Well, I'm on my little rod here. I'm switching to a smaller jig because I have yet to have one teeny tiny bite. I'm starting to get frustrated. Actually, I had one right away. Pardon me as I leave my screen.
So yeah, it was interesting to kind of like just to film that tournament where I'm like, it's going to be interesting to see how the guys that are really, especially the young guys that are really good at forward-facing sonar. There's some guys that really lean heavily on it. What are they going to do? Are they just going to be flailing around for once that's forward-facing sonar is taken away from them?
Yeah, it'll be kind of fun.
Yeah, I like it. I'm kind of excited how the year is going to go with that.
What is like the average age of the winners of those tournaments these days? Are they younger guys?
Good question. Yeah, I would. Man, a lot of young guys. Was I just hallucinating, or did I see your bobber just going down a little bit?
I don't know, man.
Keep an eye on it here.
You tell me.
I don't know. I would say like maybe mid to late 20s now.
Right.
I some of these veterans, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional bass fisherman.
Oh,
I will say now, I am very glad I didn't go that route, because seeing some of these older guys, and by older I mean, maybe say late 30s, early, late 30s, 40s, and for forward-facing, and they just are not nearly as good with it as these young guys are.
Right.
And these young guys are killers, dude.
They haven't been playing
straight up freaking killers.
They didn't play enough Call of Duty to be good at.
Well, and I would argue that probably the best anglers that have ever. I mean, the young crop of anglers is very, very good. I just would hate to be trying to survive in this kind of environment.
Yeah.
This new technology, it's like
You're getting aged out a little bit.
Oh yeah, it's.
Pardon my noise, everybody, as I'm looking for my clippers, which always seems to be just out of reach.
pretty much par for the course with
Yeah.
ice fishing, just fishing in general.
Also, as soon as I brought up my lure, like there was just nothing but chaos down where I left. Almost like they're like, oh, finally the thing that's scaring us is out of here. So
what the heck have you been up to, man? Like people, we haven't.
Yeah, I mean,
you haven't graced us with your presence in a while, and I know you're busy. And
fishing wise, it's been pretty frustrating because this is the worst time of year. I do a ton of trout fishing because I'm in southeastern Minnesota, which is, last winter was fabulous. It opens up January 1st and you can open water fish in the creeks, but this year it was really cold and I couldn't trout fish and I couldn't ice fish, so I had like this, geez, I don't know, 4 or 5 week gap, which felt like 3 months to me when I haven't fished in that long.
yeah.
But yeah, just I get out a ton, like I'm out there and I'm fishing a lot. It's just you and me finding time to hook up. That's always the battle, like.
I was thinking about this, I just need to keep my Wednesdays just open.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing.
The reason he says that is because I have a Wednesday off. I've had that built into my schedule for a long time. And it's quite effective because my wife knows it's coming and my work knows it's coming, and then I just try and fish on a Wednesday anytime.
Yeah, so for me, angling uploaded, I've been trying to figure out a schedule that makes sense, that's doable, but also kind of aggressive because I want this to be a making some income. I'd like this to provide supplemental income. I'm a freelance camera guy, so it just makes sense. I mean, I got all this camera gear and lights and everything, and both Pete and I, we grew up watching fishing shows, and it's just very natural for us to
we got out here, I don't know, that first time we were here 12 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm like kind of in the same schedule. Like usually we start tearing down. Last time I stayed in a hotel, but if we start tearing down at 9:30, I'm probably getting to bed around 1.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the beast by the time you get home and unload the gear and all that stuff. So it's like time flies out here. It sucks. It feels like you get a lot of fishing in, but I don't know, sturgeon fishing is its own beast. But all of that changes so fast. Like you're just sitting here and you're kind of, as soon as you lose your focus, all of a sudden the bobber goes under and you're hooked into a fish, and then everything's getting knocked over, multiple lines are getting caught into each other, and it only takes one fish to make me feel like a king for 3 months,
Yeah,
I'll just sit around and think about that fish.
Well, they're pretty majestic creatures.
Oh, they're amazing. I tell people I'm going sturgeon fishing through the ice, and they're almost like, they don't compute. They're like, I don't understand.
Backyard, that's cool.
Yeah, but like most people are just programmed to walleye fish or panfish, or just they're looking for food. So it still doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people. But for me, the joy is I'm not keeping a lot of fish from southern Minnesota. It's not the healthiest fish to be eating in the world. So I'm out here just for the adventure of sort of taking a sample like a biologist versus doing it like a fisherman. I've just put on a 1/8 ounce classic white jig head. I'm switching from the spoon. Of course, it's not sharp at all.
So yeah, I'm trying to get into a schedule where I can put content up on the regular, and still be able to, to obviously I got to make money with videography. But this is with YouTube and just social media in general, this is it's the new, it's a new era as far as like just being able to generate, you generate money from doing this kind of thing. So it's very exciting to me, but it's finding a schedule that's doable. I think I'm closer to it. So the idea is basically Mondays, podcast goes up, and then Wednesdays, when Pete's able to fish, if I'm able to fish, I would prefer, we've been fishing together forever.
Yeah, I guess 40 some years.
God dang. So, you know, if he's open on Wednesdays, if I can keep that open, you know, I like the idea of doing a live stream on Wednesdays.
It's trickier during your peak filming times. That's when it gets a little chaotic.
Yeah. But I'm also thinking, well, Wednesdays, that'll be my fishing day, you know?
Yeah.
And so also doing a edited video. So I've got the chesty on, got that wide angle there, got this handheld here. So in case we get a sturgeon on, we can do an edited video as well. The edited videos go up on Friday is the idea. So ideally, and it's not going to happen every week. It's realistically, I'm finding that it's going to be in those lulls in my career where I'm not working, which can be scary. And that's the other thing that's nice about this is that if it can generate some income,
at the very least, it can keep your mind off the fact that you're not making income.
Yeah. So at least, you know, I want to get I want to get at least one piece of content up, and I think podcasting is most realistic, and then content piece up on Fridays, and then, well, probably what's more realistic is maybe to do a live stream because it doesn't need to be edited, but that's the idea.
I'm really liking the tub as a sort of coffee table between us.
That's a perfect, we got a, what is this, like a Rubbermaid tub?
Yeah, this is your classic Rubbermaid tub sitting between the two chairs here, and everything was on the floor and like freezing to death, and we seem to have some sort of system set up, and as soon as we get used to it, then it'll get really warm and all this will turn to slush. We'll forget what we did. All right, let's see if this jig here can do anything. Probably missed 3 bites of my bobbers.
Yeah, you know what I was thinking about? So I thought it would be kind of fun. Do you have those older podcasts by any chance that we've done? Like we've done. There's been a number of like iterations of another fishing podcast. So we started podcasting. Gosh, what was it in 2017? Maybe even was it that long ago?
Yeah, it must have been pre-pandemic.
Yeah, it was. And I remember we did some podcasts at your house. And we had a conversation about UFOs. Remember when it was first started? It was like a New York Times, and
before there were UAPs,
right? And it was coming out, and we talked about it. And now, you know, here's the reality: like every fisherman, people might say, "Well, why would you talk about UFOs in a fishing podcast?" And I put it this way: every fisherman talks about other things, like when you're fit, you know, we talked about this before.
Everything's fair game.
Everything's fair game, right?
Yeah.
Especially when the fishing's slow. So it's kind of like this is the section of the podcast that maybe we call things to discuss when fishing sucks. There's almost some alliteration there.
Our minds wander.
Yeah.
We may be under the influence of things that enforce the fact that our minds are wandering.
Right. Good point.
There's all kinds of things that can happen.
But what gets me now, so I was pondering, like, wow, I remember I had this conversation with Pete back in like 2017 in a podcast. Look at what has happened now in 2025, and we got full-on New Jersey drones. We got this character, Lou Elizondo, who I don't trust whatsoever. I'm very suspicious of this guy. He seems like, I've seen some interviews with this guy. Seems like he's acting. And I'm like, what is happening with, there's now this psionics team that, you know, they're doing like mainstream interviews where they're saying, oh yeah, no, we use our minds to bring the UFOs to us. And I'm like, what is happening right now? I am of the opinion that it's all a psychological operation. I am not buying any of it. And I'm a guy that believes that the universe is teeming with life. But I'm like,
yeah, it's hard. You remember when we thought, we were on the St. Croix River and we thought it was a UFO? Remember that airplane that was like, he must have been in a holding pattern. You remember that? We were sitting down by the Kinnickinnick in a boat and there was just like a light and it was just like stalled in the sky.
Yeah.
And wasn't there some guy out there that was like watching our live stream and he came over to us and knew who we were, even though it was dark.
Yeah, maybe.
And we're like, did you?
I just got a bite right here. It was just a little.
Has it been under that whole time?
No, it's been like that, but it's. I just got a tap. Just got a tap. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it just reminded me that we thought we saw a UFO, and then eventually an airplane flew over, but it felt like it took an hour to get to us.
Yeah, one of the stupidest things I've ever done was calling 911 after I thought I saw a swarm of UFOs in Tulsa, Oklahoma, from the 27th floor of University Club Tower where I lived.
Let me guess, was that a Saturday night?
Yes, it was. I may have been under the influence of something.
What's 911 supposed to do? We'll be right there.
I was looking. I looked over the Arkansas River. Right. I lived on the 27th floor. Of
it was a killer view.
It really was, and it's funny you say killer. Not long after I left there and moved up here, there was a woman that pushed her boyfriend out the window of that apartment complex, and just obviously It looked like he didn't live.
It looked like a perfect place to fall to your death.
Oh yeah, it was really the armpit of Tulsa, Oklahoma, but it was a great view. But anyway, I digress.
Wasn't it Oral Roberts University, like an old dorm tower or something?
Yeah, I think at one point it was like student housing. But,
right.
So I looked to I looked kind of to the west, a little bit more to the southwest, I guess. And down the Arkansas River, I saw a number of just lights, and I'm like, what is going on? And they'd kind of flicker and act, and they'd kind of pop in and out of existence, And
they were phasing between dimensions.
Yes, they were definitely I was as well, it turns out. And I remember I'm like, I got it. So I call 911 and I'm talking to this operator, and she's really interested. She wants to believe.
She's like got not much going on that night apparently.
And she was actually really, really nice. But I come to find out there's actually an airport down there. And no, it's
wah, wah, wah.
It's something that you have to, you got to consider, because lights, like aircraft, depending on how they're coming at you, and their lights are super, especially big commercial planes, their headlights, if you will, are super bright.
Yeah, they play a ton of tricks.
Yeah, so I personally have never seen I've seen a ghost. I had a ghost encounter one time that was absolutely terrifying.
Where was that?
I was also in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was coming down. I was just seeing a buddy. I was staying at his house. I was in his guest room. I was getting ready to go to bed. Door was shut. And I remember just like laying back. And there was a window to the right, a little bit of light coming in,
Yeah.
And I'm getting ready to go to bed. And I look to my left. And here is a woman in a floral dress. I mean, like a human. Like human, like she was there. It wasn't like she was like I could, like she was translucent or like. I mean, it was solid. There was a person there.
Was she cute?
That I don't really. I mean, she had a nice figure. I don't really remember. She was younger. She wasn't an older woman.
Because you were probably single back then. That might have been an opportunity.
Yeah,
for
I guess I was. That would have been something. Wow, I never even thought about that angle. So, and she just walked from left to right, and dude, I freaked out, man. I freaked out. I was like, oh! I was like, how can there's a person? And then it kind of dawned on me as she's walking that way. I'm like, that door was shut.
You'd see her walking?
Walking. She went from left to right. The door was shut, and I went, and I'm like, I'm like, I'm seeing a ghost. And then I went like a 7-year-old. I went under the covers and just shook and sweated. And I was like, I have got to, at some point, get out from underneath these covers, and see if she's still there. I'm like,
God. Was this a house?
It was a house. It was my buddy's house. It was a newer house. It wasn't like an old house or anything. And I take the cover, and there's no one there. And I'm just like, the whole night I couldn't believe it.
Did you tell anyone at that moment?
And no,
How do you even go back to sleep?
I didn't. I did not go back to sleep, as I remember. And the next, I had to stay there another night, and I'm like, I stayed out in their living room on their their sofa.
Hell, creepo.
It was crazy. But if I'm trying to be objective about it, I could have been in that state where I was beginning to fall asleep.
Sure.
And so, but
it doesn't change your reality though.
It was as real as you hear right now.
That's crazy.
It was just crazy, dude. Crazy. It freaked me out. So yeah, but that's as far as like paranormal stuff. That's
I have
the extent.
I have no paranormal or UFOs. But I remember seeing the Brady Bunch episode where they were screwing with Bobby and they were trying to make it look like there was a UFO outside his window. But at the beginning of the episode, you don't realize it's Greg and Peter that's screwing with him with a flashlight somehow. And I was like, oh, I want to believe that so bad that Bobby saw a UFO. and then their brothers got in trouble for screwing with them.
So you are, Pete does these fantastic BWCA, Boundary Waters Canoe Area. If you're not familiar with that, is that an acronym? Is that what we call that?
Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. It's actually the BWCAW, but everyone calls it BWCA. Or the B-dub.
And so he goes up there every year. And I need to go up there at some point.
It's just canoe only. So you don't get to cheat with the motor. Everything you fish with, you have to haul in on your back. And all the best fishing is a ball-busting trek into the wilderness. But once you get in there, it is delightful.
Yeah, some of the I don't know, you get a lot of great comments about, people questioning how to do this or that, because...
Yeah, it's a scary thing if you've never done it before. I'm shocked at how many people I see that are just randomly in public that walk up to me. It's crazy. There was a guy that was, actually his friend just left a message, who was from Pennsylvania, saw the video, planned a trip, brought his dog, went to this place that took us 8 hours to get in, portaging 3 or 4 miles and paddling like another 8 or 10. And he spotted me. He started yelling, Pete, Pete. I mean, you don't even see humans up there. And he came paddling from across the lake. And he's like, hey, man, I saw your video.
That is so cool,
and
man.
I'm here from Pennsylvania. I'm
that
like,
is so
what?
Cool. I love that.
It is great. Like, it's a weird world. And then somebody else got a hold of me like, hey, remember my friend was from Pennsylvania. He found you in the wilderness. Like, we're heading up there. So there's like other people from Pennsylvania planning trips this year, which is really cool to hear, because those places only survive if people are using them. If they're not being used, then they just get turned into fancy cabins that the average Joe never can afford to use anyway.
So when do you go up? Like, what's the whole preparation? Like, how do you do it?
It's mid-June, so I've got tubs and tubs of gear that don't come out until it is Boundary Waters time. So fishing poles, fishing reels, fishing lures, fish finders, everything is tucked away. Sorry, I think it's my phone buzzing.
No worries.
And that gear doesn't get touched because it's so important up there that everything is fresh and working. You don't get a second chance up there if you get in there. If you have something that doesn't work, you don't get to drive back home and grab something.
Yeah. So
it's all freeze-dried food for the most part, unless we're frying up walleye, which is a real treat up there. Yeah, I mean, you have to plan your route. There's a lot of great websites that are built for that. Then you have to buy a permit, which we just did. You have to buy a permit in December. In January. And there might be, like, where you're launching from, they might sell 4 or 5 permits from that spot for that day. And once you get in there, you can camp anywhere you want, but you're not guaranteed a campsite anywhere. So you might be going to a lake where there's 5 campsites. The further you go in there, the better off you are as far as availability. But there's a really good chance that, not a real good chance, but the really good campsites are usually taken. It's just like this really random, beautiful, it's 1 million acres. And it's, I don't know how many lakes, over 1,000 lakes. and they're just connected by trails. Like French voyageurs used to trade furs on these trails. They used to bring them up to Hudson Bay and ship beaver pelts all over the world. But I mean, they eradicated beavers from that area. They were completely gone. And it's the best walleye fishing I've ever experienced, and pike. And then smallies were introduced, and the smallie fishing is unbelievable. Canada has their own park on their side of the border called the Quetico, which is seamless, and that doubles the size of it. So it's just like this fully protected area that kind of got overwhelmed during COVID. I mean, the amount of permits were limited, but rookies were going up there, so people that were leaving litter or wrecking campsites by cutting trees and doing lots of annoying stuff. The motto is leave no trace, so you're supposed to go in there and walk out of there without anybody knowing you were there. But it is, I mean, just sitting out there at night, you don't even need to be fishing. It's like a designated star site, you know, for the United States. So Northern Lights are fair game every night, and shooting stars. Like a cloudy night in the Boundary Waters is a real bummer. June is the worst month for mosquitoes, but the best month for fishing as far as I've experienced. But literally you can sight fish for walleyes. Like you can watch walleyes grab lures under your boat like you would a sunfish, which is ridiculous. Usually I try and get to a lake trout lake. I've been targeting lakers, which is a lot tougher, but it's one of those things I want to catch a huge laker in a canoe. I don't know, I've got 25, 26 inchers, but check out the videos if you haven't seen them, because there's 4 or 5 of them. I got another one coming that was a Quetico trip from last year. This year Canada canceled our wilderness permits, which is kind of a bummer. So we're sticking on the American side, but yeah, you should probably get up there at some point, Greg.
I will definitely, it's on my bucket list.
It's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but I mean, I've got so much of the gear already, but the trick for me is trying to manage figuring out a way to do 2 trips. You can't just add 1 person to a trip because there's 2 people in every boat, you know. So if you add 1 person, you add 2 people.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a team thing.
Yeah.
You have to have an even number of people. So
what do you do? Like, what would you advise someone to bring as far as fishing equipment?
Well, it depends on what you're fishing for. I usually fish light, but I'll bring. Someone's drilling a hole.
Is that drilling or is that a snowmobile?
I think they're drilling now. Yeah.
Okay. Am I seeing stuff? God, I could have swore.
I didn't see a bump.
Okay, sorry.
I bring a light action rod with mono for jigging, 6-pound mono, and a light reel, and then I bring a medium action rod and a medium action reel or medium reel with braid on it, which works better for trolling because it cuts. Yes,
There's a crack coming here. Hear it?
Yeah.
There's a crack coming. This is the fun of ice fishing. There's a crack coming towards us.
As soon as that guy drilled a hole, no, we're going to fall into the water.
So this could be very interesting here. There's a crack coming towards us.
Oh, there's a car driving.
It's because yeah. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart.
I don't know if the mics can pick that up, but it's a weird noise.
And as the winter rolls on, if you have a typical winter, plenty of cold, you know, you get a thicker, you know, the ice is getting thicker and thicker, and it just makes different sounds as it gets thicker. It's much more bassy, you know.
The pressure. It sounds like wires, almost like really taut wires being plucked or something. It's hard to explain, but.
Well, we got interrupted. So what were you saying as far as
so I bring a mono rod, a light rod, and then I bring a heavier rod that's got braid on it. You catch most of your biggest fish trolling up there. We'll fish with 5-6 inch wraps, shallow runners, and then you can just put sinkers on the front of them if you want to have them dive a little deeper. But you get huge pike too, so trolling with braid, it cuts through better, you get down there better, and then it's easier to deal with stuff. Pike are a nightmare in a canoe. Like, they're hard to bring in the boat. So a fish gripper, if you've ever seen a fish gripper, I think I've got one in my bag here even, is like the most valuable tool of just keeping a fish in the water. And then once you get it clamped, you're in charge, and then you can because getting a hook stuck in you up there is another nightmare. I mean, anything medically, it's a bad situation. If you're 8 or 10 hours from home, you know.
No doubt.
And if you're injured, it's going to take a lot longer than that. It's, you know, there's a lot of people that go up there and just never come back. When we went to the Quetico last year, we found a campsite, and you could see a yellow canoe on like the spit of rock, like probably half a mile out. And we're like, what is that canoe, you know?
Yeah.
And some people had drowned out there, like 2 or 3 days before we got there.
Really?
And they came in and rescued the people and left the canoes out there. They're like, we're going to have to come back for the canoes. So we didn't even realize it, but we were kind of at a spot where just some amateur paddlers were out in some big water. The wind picks up, wave dumps one boat, and waves dumps the other boat. And they lost, I think, 1 of the 4.
Wow.
I think 3 of them made it shore. But like, life jackets are just all the time. If I'm sitting in one spot jigging and it's warm weather and I'm on a little creek or something, I'm not wearing my life jacket. But if you're paddling around up there, it's crazy to not have it on, because that water is cold most of the year.
Yeah.
And the first thing you do when you hit it is take a deep breath.
Yeah.
There ain't no screwing around in a canoe. But I've never dumped a canoe, knock on wood. I'm not looking forward to it, but so far so good. But really, it's just like the wildlife is different up there. There's beavers everywhere, and they're very vocal. I woke up with bears in camp and giant moose, like, you know, 10 feet from my tent door when I opened up my zipper. Like, oh my God. But there's pine martens and voles.
I love pine martens.
Yeah, there's just like all these different, there's flying squirrels, you know? And you'll see them kind of come out at night. They come out at dusk. And they're really skilled squirrels.
That's awesome.
Some huge bats, you know. The lynx are completely dependent on the
voles and stuff.
And the rabbits. So like if the rabbit population declines, the lynx decline with them. But the rabbits will come right into camp. And so will camp jays, which is like a Canadian jay, which is like a huge bluebird. But it's Canadian. But they will literally like come and sit on your shoulder if you're eating. It scares. They'll come in with like 3 or 4 of them, and they'll line up around they'll sit on the logs around the campfire, and they'll just be like, "All right, what's up? You guys got some?" Like they're shaking you down.
Jays are very smart birds. They're a member of, I believe, it's corvids. Is what they're called?
Yeah,
that's crows, ravens, magpies. Very smart.
They've
birds.
just worked out a system to jump around site to site to site, and they're fearless. You know.
Yeah.
Quail will come into camp. You hear quail making noise all the time up there, and obviously the wolves at night. But a pack will own like 50 miles, so it's tough to run into wolves when you're in the water.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to see up there, but it's a special place. I mean,
no doubt, man. Yeah, I'd love to get up there. The closest thing I think I probably experienced that is when I was a kid backpacking in Yosemite.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's the same kind of deal.
But yeah, I'd love to.
This is just like, it's got a Minnesota feel to it. You know,
no doubt. Yeah,
uniquely. It's that boreal forest kind of.
It's world renowned. I mean, you know.
Yep.
For sure.
It's raw wilderness.
Well, I think we might want to wrap up this podcast. One of the reasons I'm seeing like maybe that makes sense is that we have there's always something when you're trying to do production out in nature. You got to be kind of ready for all kinds of things going wrong. Battery's not working, which is the case right now with that's the battery that's powering my iPhone. Oh, wait a minute. This bobber's going down. I'm going to hit it.
Come on. This ain't over yet.
Get it. I got something.
He's just not that big?
Maybe not. Maybe this is how we wrap up this. Look at this. We were just talking about channel cats. We're doing
our first channel cat.
Here, a little young channel cat. That's how we're going to wrap up this podcast, I think.
This is your first cat of the winter season, right?
That's something. It is actually. It is actually the first.
I was hoping that Sturge was knocking that down.
There it is, young channel cat. They get when they're young, they get these.
Let's name him Spotty.
You want to call him Spot?
Yeah.
Ow. And they're also, their pectorals are very sharp.
Very, very sharp at that age.
Young. Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't know if that's a good sign or bad sign.
we caught a channel cat. So there it is. They are
The skunk is off the trip, buddy.
Yep.
And you caught it just in time for the credits, the closing credits.
So thanks for watching, listening to the podcast, and how you can, if you're listening to the podcast and you want to watch the, and we're also doing an edit video here too,
right.
So this is exciting. But yeah, if you're watching, let's let this guy go. If you're listening to the podcast and want to watch it, bye guy, go to Angling Uploaded. Probably the best way is go to the YouTube channel, Angling Uploaded, just search it, and then there's a playlist for the podcast. You can listen that way. If you are watching the podcast, you can listen to the podcast, Another Fishing Podcast, on all major podcasting apps. So thanks for joining us. And Pete, you have any parting words?
Thanks for listening. It's fun to...
You know what you need to do.
Oh, yeah. I have some wise words of wisdom. And this is especially pertinent because we actually have some here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not as big of a deal when you're ice fishing, but don't leave your crawlers in the sun. This is Pete Wagner for Another Fishing Podcast.